My boyfriend maxed out my credit card while I struggled with medical bills. Now he can't understand why I'm stressed about money. If you want to go, then we need to go, know what I mean? I can't keep sacrificing my health for his fun. What should I do? We have been together for 6 years. We started off as friends with benefits and slowly transitioned to partners to the point of considering some wedding rings. I am a very anxious person and most likely autistic, but I am understanding to the extent of being seen as a doormat. He is a very outgoing guy, most likely has attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, and comes from a large family of talkers. We met after I moved to a new state with no friends, and we met almost every weekend. I have experienced trauma from a pedophilic relationship I had during high school and college with a 25-year-old. After 4 years together, he cheated on me with someone smaller and younger looking because I focused too much on my schoolwork. I regret ever meeting him because I am still trying to heal and figure out what constitutes too much or too little when it comes to my own needs and wants. I moved states with a clean slate and met my now boyfriend. It started off rocky since I am female to male non-binary and he is a gay cisgender man. We kept our relationship somewhat ambiguous because I do not possess certain physical attributes that he desires, yet he still wanted to be with me. At one point, he saw a guy who gave both of us sexually transmitted diseases. My mother still does not forgive him for that. However, I do not have many friends, and he has helped me in various ways, such as with my mental health. He is a caring and compassionate person. He has been a shoulder for others to cry on, even for me, and he has his own issues with family and past mental hospital visits. I know he always means well. 2 years ago, he encouraged me to come out of my shell more. I was a basement-dwelling, massively multiplayer online game player after moving, and we moved in together. He was being kicked out by his landlord. The landlord decided to sell the home unexpectedly one day and gave him a month to leave, and I felt lonely and crushed by my parents from living with them. We found a lovely place and I feel fortunate, but it seems that since moving in and being together nearly 24/7 instead of just weekend visits, things have changed. Our activities together have become less frequent, as has our physical intimacy, even though we have an entire home to ourselves and we have discussed our interests. I used to spend more freely since I did not have rent and other expenses. I would help with groceries and household tasks in exchange for living with my parents. But since moving in together, I have become more frugal. We have continued to attend expos and events together, having fun and buying things occasionally, but always on a budget. About a year ago, I had to undergo an MRI because my health has been declining and I have been unable to pay my medical bills, worrying about how much addressing my health issues will cost. We also experienced our first winter together, and our electricity bill was higher than we could afford. He persuaded me to obtain a credit card, and I did after months of him asking and discussing it to help manage our bills. The electricity, internet, and home bills are in his name, so I do not actively monitor that information. I received a decent credit card, my first, and I had good credit since I did not make many purchases and we managed some bills. At some point, he repeatedly asked to use the credit card for things like lunches at work and extra money for snacks. I made sure not to charge anything on the credit card unless it was for bills or emergencies, but as much as I disliked it, I was lenient with him a few months after acquiring the card. I agreed to certain purchases he made, but he eventually maxed out the card in my name, and I am now trying to make at least the minimum payments. I earn more than he does. I also work at a warehouse, which is physically demanding, although only by $4 per hour, so I have allowed him to borrow from me on and off. He has bought me things even when I did not want them. His love language is gifts, and I appreciate that he thinks of me and cares for my happiness. Yet I feel like we are just accumulating more debt while I cannot even make a dent in my medical bills. I add this not to point out another issue, but for more transparency in the situation. My emotions surrounding it are a different matter. We reopened our relationship to become polyamorous. A few months in, I tried to find someone perhaps to help with finances, but also for companionship when my boyfriend was unavailable, for intimacy since my boyfriend stopped initiating, and regardless of my efforts, we did not get far. Things did not progress, and I met only one guy before leaving the dating scene. He met a few men, and now 6 months later, his boyfriend, a 23-year-old man, is living with us. His family was trying to evict him, and we offered him a place to stay. I have funded their outings when my boyfriend could not afford them and paid for groceries that catered to just them. Ever since he moved in, things have felt different. My boyfriend enjoys going out because he feels confined at home. He constantly seeks activities, but they either cost money, such as bowling or skating, or are financially related in a way that makes me feel miserable, such as window shopping. I despise wasting gas and time going to a store to look at items I wish I could buy, but know I cannot, only to leave empty-handed. Therefore, I refuse some days and have told him my reasons, but now he has been taking his boyfriend out instead. We established designated days for our relationship, but it feels like I am losing so much no matter how much I try to communicate my feelings. Our outings cost money and I literally cannot afford to go out. I have stopped buying things for myself and have only cereal for lunch since it is inexpensive. Yet I see my boyfriend going out, spending money on gym memberships that cost $180 when we already have a bench and other equipment at home, getting takeout frequently, and using my money for subscriptions I did not agree to, which has left me in the negative. I have tried discussing my financial concerns with him. The fact that I have $2,000 in credit card debt and $900 in medical bills, these are just to be managed. My health issues have not been addressed because the procedures for my teeth and spine will cost thousands troubles me. He has told me that he conceals purchases he makes, which greatly upsets me. Today is our outing, although I say outing. It is just a couple of hours at a store painting with a group, nothing intimate or spending quality time like he does with 2 full days with his boyfriend, and I genuinely cannot afford it. My next bill payment is due in a few days, which will put me into the negative. I have not been able to pay my medical bills in months, and I was late for the first time this month on my credit card payment. He wants to spend time with me, which I admire and appreciate, but I feel like I will never improve. I am doing reasonably well mentally, but I am truly falling apart since I cannot even afford to get a haircut. Yet when I mention my uncertainty about going today, he responds, "Okay, I understand. We can pay for it next week." She does not mind. I would prefer to go anyway to have our time together, but I understand if you do not want to. He adds, "If you really do not want to go, I will probably go to the gym, to be honest." Referring to the store owner and the underlying context of the gym being his and his boyfriend's shared activity, and then says, "I have 20 cash I was saving, but we can use that tonight." I do not know what to say anymore regarding money. We are trying, and if we stop doing activities like this class entirely, then we will drive ourselves crazy. If you want to go, then we need to go, you know what I mean. I have not been able to save any money since it has been going toward the household and bills. I do not know what to do. I still love him and care for him, and I think he feels the same about me, but I cannot handle him questioning why I cannot take care of my health when the money I attempt to save for it just goes to him. In summary, our relationship has been struggling romantically after moving in together as well as financially. I have health issues that he has expressed concern about, yet any extra money I have goes toward paying bills he has not covered his share, and repaying a credit card I acquired because he said it could help us manage our bills. He is a good person, but he is terrible with money, and no matter how many times I bring it up, he never adheres to a plan, instead preferring to go out and do things with another consensual romantic partner to avoid feeling confined. How do I communicate my concerns about debt and my desire to improve our spending habits when he insists he needs to engage in activities, such as taking classes and maintaining a gym membership, to get out of the house? Story 2. I had a chilling premonition about a pilot's engine failure before his first flight back. "If you lose power, don't turn back," I warned him. Minutes later, I heard his desperate mayday call and raced to the crash site, only to find I was standing on his humerus. The horror still haunts me. This occurred a few years ago, but it has been haunting me intermittently ever since. I feel as though I need to express what happened. There was a man I had seen flying a few times. We were not close. I was not his instructor, just another pilot at the same airfield. However, I recognized him and his aircraft. His aircraft had been grounded for about 5 weeks due to engine maintenance. It was his first flight back after all that work had been completed. For some reason, I could not shake a bad feeling about the situation. Call it gut instinct, paranoia, or whatever you want, but something just felt amiss. I had this overpowering sense that the engine would fail. Even though I was not his instructor or particularly familiar with him, I approached him before his flight and reviewed engine failure procedures with him. Specifically, I emphasized what to do if the engine failed during takeoff. If you lose power during takeoff, do not attempt to turn back. Maintain a straight flight path or make a shallow turn only if you have sufficient altitude. I must have reiterated that point to him for at least 20 minutes. He was polite, nodded along, and correctly repeated the procedures back to me. It seemed like he absorbed what I was saying. By the time we finished, I felt assured that he understood the danger and knew how to act if the worst occurred. However, there remained a persistent feeling of dread. Something deep inside kept telling me that it would not be sufficient. I went inside the airport manager's office, attempting to convince myself that he would be all right. Then I heard a frantic, terrified mayday call over the radio. His voice was shaking, filled with panic. I rushed outside, heart racing, to see what was happening. I saw his aircraft already struggling shortly after takeoff. The engine had failed during the climb, exactly the scenario I had drilled him about. For those who are unaware, if an aircraft's engine fails immediately after takeoff, the worst action you can take is to attempt to turn back to the runway. The aircraft is flying at a low altitude and slow speed, and a sharp turn at that height can cause the aircraft to lose lift. It will stall, which means the wings stop generating enough lift to keep the aircraft airborne. If the stall occurs while turning, it often results in a spin, with the aircraft spiraling uncontrollably toward the ground. That is precisely what happened. He panicked, attempted to turn back, and the aircraft stalled and spun, spiraling in a tight, sickening motion straight into the trees and the ground. The sound it made was something I will never forget. It was a series of horrifying, crunching thuds as the aircraft skimmed the tops of the trees, followed by a final, deeper crunch as it struck the earth. There was no explosion, no raging fire, just smoke and faint smoldering. I jumped into the airport pickup truck with my colleague and we drove to the crash site, desperately hoping he was alive. As I approached the wreckage, everything was twisted metal and broken trees. I was carefully navigating through the brush, rushing toward the remains of the aircraft, hoping there was something I could do to assist him. Suddenly, a doctor who had arrived moments before me called out, "Hey, you are stepping on his humerus." Yes, there are many doctors that frequent airports. I looked down. Sure enough, I was standing on a broken piece of his body part of his humerus, not the entire bone. But the horror of what he said did not fully register at that moment. I looked up and that was when I saw his body. It was mostly intact but terribly crushed, as if the impact had collapsed him inward. His skin was torn and bloody, sunken in, but parts of him were still recognizable. That was when it struck me. Hard, the shock, the horror, the guilt. I felt dizzy and stumbled away from the wreckage, barely managing a few steps before violently vomiting. My legs buckled and I had to sit down a little farther from the crash site, trembling uncontrollably. Everything felt surreal. I had that twisted premonition about the engine failing, made desperate attempts to prevent the disaster, and then watched it unfold anyway. Then I found myself literally standing on a part of him. I kept replaying that day repeatedly in my mind. I was not his instructor, I barely knew him, but something urged me to warn him, and when he disregarded it, it felt as though I had failed him. Summary. A few years ago, a pilot I barely knew was about to fly for the first time after his aircraft underwent 5 weeks of maintenance for engine work. I had a premonition that the engine would fail, so I drilled him on what to do in such an event. Minutes later, I heard his terrified mayday call, rushed outside, and witnessed him experience an engine failure, panic, and crash. At the crash site, a doctor told me I was standing on part of his humerus. I vomited violently. It continues to haunt me. Edit for those who believe this is not a true story. Please read this carefully. In aviation, we often emphasize that you should treat other pilots with respect because you never know if it will be the last time you see them. There is a reason for this. If you live, work, and breathe aviation long enough, you are destined to witness at least one catastrophic event. I have seen 3. However, this was the only time I actually saw a dead body. Airports have what is called an emergency response plan. It assigns individuals to different roles during an accident on the field. That day, I was not part of the emergency response plan, but the person I was with after speaking to the pilot was. He worked on the ramp. I wanted to accompany him and help, primarily because I was present and thought I could be of assistance. I did not realize it would be so gruesome. I had no idea what I was walking into. I simply wanted to help. And here is the reality. When people think of plane crashes, they envision a large aircraft crashing to the ground. However, general aviation differs significantly. The crash rate is considerably higher, as is the fatality rate compared to commercial aviation. The risks are genuine, constant, and sometimes terrifyingly close. Many individuals reading this might dismiss it as fiction because it sounds too extraordinary, yet life is not tidy. It does not adhere to some internet-approved standard of plausibility. The most outrageous, gut-wrenching events are often the most real. Consider the student of mine who was also a skydiver. Based on how he flew and how he managed himself after obtaining his license, I just knew. I knew in my gut that he was destined to kill himself in a plane or while skydiving one day. He exhibited a reckless invincibility complex. I sat him down multiple times, trying to impress upon him the dangers of hazardous attitudes in aviation. I even provided him with books about human factors. He appeared to understand, but I could tell he did not truly grasp the gravity. I even warned a few friends that he was likely to kill himself due to reckless behavior. 3 months later, on my birthday, I awoke to a text from one of those friends stating something like, "You were right, XY killed himself while skydiving." That is what genuine human tragedy looks like. It is not some neatly scripted tale where individuals pass away from cancer or old age in a linear fashion. It is brutal, unfair, and frequently absurd, and it occurs all too often in aviation. On another occasion, while working as a flight training unit dispatcher, I received a phone call from someone clearly distressed. They pleaded with me to check if their relative's aircraft was parked at our airport. I did not see it. When I inquired about the type of airplane and they mentioned a Cessna 150, I immediately felt a chill run down my spine. I had already read the news that morning. A Cessna 150 had crashed in a large state park overnight. I provided them with the number for the Flight Information Center and ended the call, then informed my supervisor. It turned out that the caller's nephew was the one who crashed and died with his friend. Aviation is unforgiving. It is not a sanitized, carefully controlled environment. Accidents occur, and they happen frequently. Just because my experiences may seem extreme does not mean they are not real. The most outrageous events, they are the ones most likely to be true. A story 3. In high school, I bonded with my best friend Jenna and her boyfriend Marcus, but love blossomed behind the scenes. I wish it was us that ended up together, I confessed, only for him to say, "You still could." Now I'm married but can't stop wondering what if. This is a very lengthy narrative, so I apologize in advance for the extended read. I am in love with my former best friend's Jenna ex-husband Marcus. These are not their real names. I am married. I have been married for almost 2 years now and have been with my husband for 6, approaching 7 years. The story begins in high school. My husband and I are high school sweethearts, but we maintained a long-distance relationship for a little over 2 years because I moved from North Carolina, where we are both originally from, to northern Michigan, where we both currently reside. My parents moved us here during my high school years so that we could be closer to their support system, as they were facing financial difficulties and needed my family's assistance. I met Jenna after another classmate invited me to lunch on my first day, as we had relocated to a small town where very few new students enrolled at that high school. We had some enjoyable conversations, but our friendship developed quite slowly at first. We only became best friends after she invited me to a movie that she wanted to see after all her other friends had declined. I agreed because I genuinely wanted to make friends at this new school. We hit it off and became best friends very quickly after attending the movie together, realizing we had much in common. We were both in long-term relationships with boyfriends who were also quite similar, which is important later on. Her boyfriend Marcus was somewhat standoffish toward me at first. He did not seem to care for anyone except for Jenna. He was struggling with school due to some family issues and mental health challenges at the time, so I understood why he was not very keen on interacting with me. Jenna and I continued to grow closer. We became inseparable, spending most weekends and any free time we had together. When my family relocated 30 minutes away after we both became adults, I would make that drive to spend almost every weekend with her. Gradually, Marcus and I began to befriend each other as well. During our senior year, we shared a class with only 5 other students, so we sat next to each other, joked, and talked. We genuinely became friends, which made me happy because I felt close to my best friend's boyfriend. After we all graduated, I continued to spend most of my time with the two of them. It got to the point where they would come to me for advice on their relationship struggles and other similar matters. Marcus even asked for my help in planning and preparing his proposal to Jenna. I realize now that I should not have given my opinions on their relationship because it was not my place, but I truly wanted to be good friends and I would do anything to keep them close. After Marcus proposed and Jenna agreed, we planned to move back to North Carolina and live together as a group, including my now husband, Jason, a fictitious name. I had told Jenna that I would move to North Carolina with or without her and she could join me if she wished. Jenna and Marcus agreed, primarily because Marcus would follow Jenna anywhere if she asked. We found a small house to share, a 2-bedroom, 2-bath, and started looking for jobs. Jason quit his job right after we moved in because his family was going through a particularly challenging time, and his management was not granting him the time off he needed to deal with the situation. My job as a shift manager at a fast food restaurant was covering both of our portions of the rent, while Jenna and Marcus had not found jobs yet. They repeatedly assured me that they were actively looking, but they never secured any employment. Marcus's uncle was helping them with their share of the rent, leaving me responsible for food, water, and electricity as well. However, I wanted everything to work out so badly that I did not mind. I was the only one working while the other 3 spent all day playing video games, watching movies, and hanging out while I worked shift after shift. Around this time, my then-fiancé and Jenna began to grow uncomfortably close. She started confiding in him about everything from her issues with Marcus to her family struggles and mental health concerns. They would sit in Jenna and Marcus's room with the door closed, engaging in lengthy conversations where Jason provided her with advice and helped her work through some of her thoughts. They experienced very similar family issues, which allowed them to find comfort in one another. At least, that was what I was told. This continued, and I began to feel burnt out from my job and the situation at home. Jason would frequently choose to spend time with her over me, explaining that she needed his help and that he was merely trying to be a good friend. During this time, Marcus completely shut me out because of what I now understand was Jenna telling him lies about how I disliked him and was speaking negatively about him and his mental health issues behind his back, which was untrue. I felt incredibly alone during this period. You can probably guess what transpired next. One day I came home to find Marcus and Jenna sitting on the couch. Keep in mind that we only had one car at that time, and Jason drove me home without mentioning that they were waiting for me. They sat me down and informed me that they were breaking up and moving back to Michigan. I would have to figure things out down there with only my income and Jason, which was definitely not feasible. So Jason and I decided to move back to Michigan and stay with my parents. On the same day, Marcus pulled us aside to express that one of the reasons for their breakup was that Jenna had feelings for Jason. Jason claimed throughout this entire ordeal that he had no knowledge of such feelings and just wanted to be a good friend and a brother to her, a belief that both Marcus and I accepted. I sided with Marcus and told Jason that I too felt uncomfortable with how close they had become. This was the moment when Marcus and I began to grow closer, and I stopped speaking to Jenna. Jenna did not take this well and avoided acknowledging any feelings for Jason whatsoever. She ended up damaging the house, while Jason and Marcus were picking me up from work one day and moved out before we even returned home. We remained uncertain about how she got back to Michigan later since she did not have her driver's license. Once we were all back in Michigan, I maintained a close relationship with Marcus until we discovered that Jenna and Jason had been having an affair during those last 2 months we lived there. Following this revelation, Marcus decided he no longer wanted to associate with me after I chose to stay with Jason. I missed my friendship with Marcus throughout this period and regretted my decision. It was during this time that I began to recognize my feelings for Marcus. I initially believed that we could have all switched partners like a story I once heard, where best friends exchanged partners and found themselves much happier with their new relationships than with their previous ones. Jason and Jenna seemed more compatible with each other, while Marcus and I appeared to be better suited together. We connected on a deeper level, had more in common, and simply clicked better than they did. I realized just how much I enjoyed Marcus's presence only after it was too late. I chose to forgive Jason because we had been together for so long, and he vowed to change and provide me with everything I needed. Jason then cheated on me again with Jenna. Marcus reached out for the first time in a long while to inform me of this, and I was devastated. Yet I chose again to remain with Jason. Marcus decided to give Jenna another chance until this incident. Following that, he broke down emotionally. He was so deeply in love with Jenna that he stopped communicating with everyone except for his best friend, began working out for 6 hours a day, and focused on his job. He transformed into a different person. I continue to be with Jason, who has genuinely improved himself for the better. For over a year now, he has been a supportive, loving, and caring partner. Regardless, a few months ago, I reached out to Marcus to check in on him. He was curt and distant but stated that he did not hate me, just disapproved of the decisions I had made for myself. I expressed my regret about my choices. He told me that I still could make a different choice. I never confessed my feelings to him. I never told him that I wished we had ended up together. However, I seriously doubt he would have been interested in me regardless. After a few weeks of our occasional conversations while he was at work, he texted me to say that he had just entered into a new relationship and did not want his girlfriend to feel uncomfortable about our discussions, so he wished me well and blocked me. Jason is completely unaware that I ever spoke with Marcus at all. Still, I find myself sitting here, thinking about Marcus constantly and wondering what might have been. I am uncertain if I miss him as a best friend or as something more. However, I know that I love him. Anyways, thank you for readings. Story 4. I just found out I'm pregnant after my boyfriend's doubts about marrying me resurfaced. What if he feels forced to stay? I'm terrified he'll resent me, especially since I've struggled with my health and finances. How do I break this news without breaking us? My boyfriend and I will have been dating for 4 years by the end of this month. He has been telling me and others for years that he wants to marry me. He has essentially asked for my father's blessing multiple times and taken me to have our ring sizes fitted. Recently, we discussed marriage, choosing a ring, and potentially buying a house together soon. Even more recently, he finally expressed that he felt pressured to marry me due to the difficult situations I have faced, such as financial issues, housing struggles, health challenges, food insecurity, and mild hygienic poverty. I do not have regular access to resources to clean my laundry. I reassured him that I did not want him to feel compelled to marry me and all my issues are my own. He does not have to feel responsible for them. Through our extended conversation, I learned that much of his anxiety arises from the belief that divorce is often inevitable, particularly after witnessing how difficult marriage has been for others. We did not have many positive role models while growing up. He also mentioned that once individuals become involved, their problems inevitably affect each other. I have noticed that he struggles with empathy, making it understandable that he would not want to deal with someone else's difficulties. However, prior to this, we continuously discussed our future together, including marriage and children. In fact, he was the one who frequently brought up the idea. It was never initiated by me. Now here is where the title of my post comes into play. I have been taking birth control for the entire duration of our relationship. I did not think there were any side effects other than an extremely low libido. I assumed the feelings of sadness and low energy were just normal. Why would that be normal? Because I also have an autoimmune disease that requires me to take a prescribed medication. Herein lies the problem. I am terrible at remembering to take my medications. I often forget to take my autoimmune pill for weeks or even months, and am expected to continue that for the rest of my life until the organ targeted by the disease inevitably fails. However, since my diagnosis and prescription, I have frequently forgotten to take it. I was mostly consistent with my birth control. However, occasionally I would forget to take it for 3 consecutive days, and I never experienced any issues. The autoimmune disease I have renders many individuals with the condition infertile, so I assumed I might also be infertile. Whenever I forgot to take my birth control and finally remembered, I would test and always receive a negative result. Each time this happened, I felt sadness, as it made me think about the possibility that I might not be able to have a child as I have always dreamed of, and even if I did conceive, it was likely I would suffer multiple miscarriages. We lived separately, and a while ago he was staying over for several days in a row. I was suffering from insomnia caused by our conflicting work schedules. I completely forgot that I needed to take my birth control for nearly a week. For some reason, the distraction of being wrapped up in his company amidst our chaotic schedules caused it to slip my mind. When I did realize I had forgotten, I remembered that in the past I had taken 3 pills at once to catch up, so I thought I could do the same this time. I decided to take all 5 or 6 pills I missed at once that night. The next day I felt terrible and struggled to stay awake. Thankfully, I had the day off work. I believe I called in because I was feeling extremely depressed, which was my excuse, but I kept passing out repeatedly. I told my boyfriend what happened, and he asked how I could do that to myself and whether it was even safe. I replied that I was uncertain but insisted that I was fine. Then it happened again, the same scenario with him visiting for multiple days, a chaotic schedule and sleep deprivation. I forgot to take my pills again for several days. However, this time I realized I actually felt better without the pills than I had in years. I cannot recall how long I went without them. I had a heightened libido, increased energy, felt more cheerful overall, and enjoyed better sexual experiences. I wondered how I could return to taking these pills. I remembered my previous experience of taking too many at once and getting sick, which frightened me. I did not have time to consult a doctor, and I wished I could stop taking them altogether. I speculated that perhaps I was not fertile in any case. I even took a pregnancy test, which was negative. I thought I might just wait until the day I was supposed to take my pill again, which was a Thursday, so I planned to start over that upcoming Thursday. However, I honestly could not recall which Thursday that was since I had forgotten so thoroughly. Then I kept forgetting every Thursday. I was conflicted about how to resume taking the pills. Should I just take a bunch at once or wait until Thursday to start again? I also did not want to take them, but I still wanted to engage in sexual activity, and we both find condoms uncomfortable. I felt embarrassed and scared to tell him how long I had forgotten. I kept worrying he might think I was doing this on purpose. I feared that if I revealed my oversight, he might lose attraction to me and decide he did not want to have sex if it meant using condoms. I know how this sounds. It sounds awful. I feel awful. The point is, maybe last week or the week before, I finally resumed taking the pills on Thursday. I forgot a few times by one day and tried to catch up. I had noticed I was experiencing a lot of cramps lately and thought they were due to my inconsistent birth control use. However, I also realized that I was constantly bloated, even in the morning when my stomach is usually flat. I craved an extraordinary amount of milk lately, and I'm talking about being able to consume a gallon and immediately want another, although I don't, as that is excessive and probably not advisable. I just figured I was dehydrated. Today, I looked in the mirror and thought that my belly button appeared more like an out tie than it typically does. So I decided to take a pregnancy test just for fun while getting ready for a lash lift appointment, for which I had a gift card and was scheduled in an hour. To my astonishment, it was positive. I nearly fainted. It felt as though my world collapsed around me. I panicked and struggled to find anything as I tried to gather my things to take a shower because I was shaking so badly. I recalled a strange fluttering feeling I had in the lunchroom at work earlier today, which had been somewhat painful and made me hunch over. Additionally, I have been vaping and taking kratom during this time, and I decided to have sushi for lunch today, along with drinking alcohol at a recent work party. And now I am pregnant. I later took another test from a different brand that also indicated positive. Sometimes I struggle to feed myself. I usually only eat once a day, typically lunch at work, after I run out of money. What would happen to a baby in such circumstances? I feel like the worst person in the world. I do not know how to inform him. Tomorrow is Saturday and I have to work for the next 5 consecutive days, so I have no idea where to go to confirm whether this is true or to determine how far along I might be. I have not had a period in years, so I have no idea how long I could have been pregnant. I worry that he will resent me for the rest of our lives, believing he is really being forced to marry me. Even if that is not the case, he may still feel compelled to be tied to me forever, even if he does not want that. He might deny it and say it is not true, resulting in him thinking I am trying to manipulate him. I would reassure him that he does not have to stay, I can raise the child myself. However, he would likely feel a sense of responsibility. Even though he still wanted us to live together soon, he now doubts that he wants to marry me because he suddenly feels pressured into it. I am terrified of how angry he will be with me, and I am also fearful of how this will affect our relationship. What if the baby has birth defects due to all the things I have continued to do while being unknowingly pregnant? I do not believe he could handle that. He is often indecisive about everything in his life and consistently changes his mind about our relationship. He went from wanting to move into a house this year and discussing ring details to doubting marriage altogether. And now I am pregnant, I suppose. I fear he will resent me, thinking I have taken his life away from him. I do not want that for him. I do not want him to feel obligated to be a father to a child he does not want with a woman he does not want to be with. I have not taken my autoimmune medication in so long that I cannot remember the last time I did. It is common to experience multiple miscarriages if you become pregnant with this disease. If he had been okay with us and we experienced a miscarriage, how would that affect our relationship? Would he even cope with it? I simply do not know. I have never been so terrified. Story 5. After 2 years with Tim, I ended it saying, I can no longer trust him with my heart. Friends think I was hasty, but after his dismissive remarks and rising tensions, I felt the love fading. Can I really risk my heart again after such a struggle? I need to express my feelings and perhaps seek some advice. Unfortunately, this will be lengthy, but I believe it is all relevant. I'm a 46-year-old female who ended my relationship with my boyfriend Tim, a 54-year-old male, after dating for 2 years and 4 months. We met online and spent 3 weeks chatting and talking on the phone before our first date. We initially planned to meet for coffee, but we ended up talking for 9 consecutive hours. He walked me to the subway, and not wanting to end the date without a kiss, I gave him a quick peck before dashing to my train. We texted each other the entire way home, and from that point on we began each day with a good morning text, communicated throughout the day, and concluded with a good night text. We also spoke on the phone nearly every day. Our dates were filled with fun, and we introduced each other to our children. Mine are grown, while he has a teenager, as well as our friends and extended family. My father was particularly fond of him. Everyone liked him, and I was genuinely in love. We had numerous shared hobbies and interests, allowing us to converse about everything and anything. One topic I discussed was my struggles with attention deficit disorder, depression, and multiple sclerosis. I was honest about my conditions from the very beginning, and after explaining my situation, I asked him to take some time to genuinely consider whether he wanted to pursue a relationship with someone facing these challenges, as they would always be a part of my life. He took a couple of days to think it over, researched multiple sclerosis, and indicated that he still wanted to date me. I have never been particularly good at choosing men. My dating history consists of cheaters, alcoholics, passive individuals, and so forth. However, I view each unsuccessful relationship as a lesson that I needed to learn. I never repeated the same mistake twice, but I continued to make new mistakes. I dated an alcoholic who successfully concealed his addiction until he moved in with me. He broke my heart and spirit to the extent that I became a mere shell of my former self. I cried all my tears and invested my soul into trying to save him, as he claimed he would take his own life without me. Ultimately, I reached a point where I had to choose between my own life and his, and I chose my own, ultimately kicking him out. He is fine, those were empty threats. This detail is relevant later. After spending a couple of years reconstructing my heart and soul, I attempted to date again, though perhaps I should have waited a little longer. I joined a dating site and matched with a very attractive man. For our first date, we went for a walk with my neighbor's dog. I should have heeded the dog's persistent barking at him. He overwhelmed me with affectionate gestures, but I was still so fragile that I failed to recognize it. I was somewhat taken aback when he declared his love for me after just 2 weeks, but it felt nice to have someone so infatuated with me. After 3 months, he began discussing moving in together, which gave me pause. We talked about jealousy, and he said that if I wasn't jealous, it meant I didn't truly love him. I countered that jealousy is rooted in insecurity and is about controlling someone else. His reaction to my perspective was so negative that I decided to end the relationship immediately, prompting subsequent stalking and threatening messages that lasted for years. I no longer felt safe in my own home and began accumulating possessions, becoming a hoarder under the impression that I could hide behind all my belongings. I sought help, stopped hiding, and started working on organizing and getting rid of my excess items. My attention deficit disorder did not make this task any easier, as it was difficult to begin when I couldn't determine where to start. My multiple sclerosis also contributed to my fatigue, causing my mind and body to work against each other. By the time I met Tim, I had made significant strides in decluttering my life but still had a long way to go. I shared everything with him, and since he spent time at my apartment, he witnessed the extent of my situation. He was supportive, helping me transport items to thrift stores and the dump, and expressed pride in my progress. Last summer, I was presented with an opportunity for a new apartment, which I eagerly accepted to escape the negative memories embedded in the walls of my old place. I began packing, but I had an overwhelming amount of belongings and insufficient time to decide what to keep, so I ended up packing almost everything. It took us 2 full days to move all of it. Tim claims this is when his feelings for me began to change, but I sensed a shift prior to that. I first noticed the change after he returned from a long weekend abroad with friends about 8 months ago. Upon his return, he looked at me differently. His gaze, which once conveyed that I was the most wonderful person in the world, never returned. Although he still seemed to like me, his declarations of love lacked sincerity. My move exacerbated the situation. Although I refrained from bringing it up to avoid complicating matters, I became increasingly aware of how I articulated my thoughts and feelings without understanding why. I could feel us drifting apart and attempted to think of ways to reconnect. I suggested more enjoyable activities, but it felt as if he was engaging only to appease me rather than from genuine interest. I also attempted to enhance our intimate life, but he appeared perplexed by it, prompting me to pull away as a form of self-protection. Tim began drinking more frequently and confessed that it concerned him somewhat. When I suggested he consult a professional about the issues he was experiencing, knowing it might be beneficial, he became incredibly angry and defensive. He accused me of comparing him to my exes, claiming I was labeling him an alcoholic, and he said many other things that I cannot recall due to my tendency to mentally shut down when I feel attacked. I am addressing this matter in therapy. For our 2-year anniversary, I reserved a table at a nice restaurant and purchased him some gifts, nothing extravagant, just a few items he had mentioned. He gave me a plant without a pot from a flower shop near the train station, and he had been drinking. He claimed he had consumed only 1 beer. During dinner, he distorted my words, causing me to feel as if I had to defend every statement I made. I cannot vividly remember the specifics of our conversation, but I know a significant part of my love for him diminished that night. Later, I mentioned we needed to discuss things since I wanted to avoid a repeat of our anniversary dinner. He appeared surprised, asserting that we had a lovely time that night. We celebrated Christmas with our children, and it was a delightful evening. The following day, it was just the two of us, and he initiated a conflict time, not even sure what to label it. It felt combative, as I once again felt compelled to defend myself, but he remained calm throughout, continually misrepresenting my words until I eventually fell silent. He laughed and asked if I was in a bad mood, to which I replied yes, explaining that I felt attacked without understanding why. He maintained he was merely having a conversation, yet I stated that his manner of discussing things was hurtful, and I was unwilling to engage further. He completely dismissed my feelings, causing me to cry. I am not someone who cries easily. A couple of weeks later, he used words that I had specifically shared with him as my biggest triggers, words that make me feel terrible. I told him he had crossed the line, and from then on we had numerous discussions about our relationship. Somehow he managed to deflect all conversations concerning his actions or words, redirecting them to my challenges related to my attention deficit disorder and multiple sclerosis. I suggested we take a break to genuinely reflect on our relationship. Upon doing so, I realized that I had begun to watch what I said out of fear of provoking him. Although he had never raised his voice or displayed anger toward me, I could sense it lurking beneath the surface, threatening to emerge. I ended the relationship by expressing that I could no longer trust him with my heart. I confided in a friend about ending my relationship with Tim and the reasons behind it, and she believed I had acted too hastily due to the notion that he hadn't really done anything and all couples fight sometimes. I am unsure why I shared all of this here. I do not intend to reconcile with Tim, but perhaps there is something I should consider if I ever decide to venture into dating again in the future. For now, I will focus on myself and my adult children, learning to truly love myself and ensuring that I have no more broken pieces. Story 6. I spent a decade pretending to be the father I never wanted. You'll regret this, my wife said, and I caved to pressure for a second child. Now, as she battles sleepless nights, I sneak away saying I'm too busy at work. Is it too late to change my mind? This feels terrible, and it seems like I am avoiding the consequences of my actions, but I cannot help how I feel. My wife and I have been together for 9 years and married for 7. Early in our marriage, I believed I was ready to become a father, so we started trying. Soon she became pregnant, and suddenly I panicked. I realized that I was not truly prepared to be a father, and I did not want that. I did not want the sleepless nights, the hard work, or the responsibility. Therefore, when she had a miscarriage, I admit that I felt relieved. My wife never really acted as if she was overly enthusiastic about motherhood. Her attitude was mostly, if it happens, it happens. However, after the miscarriage, she had the opposite reaction to mine. She desperately wanted to become a mother now. We had many difficult discussions in which I explained that I did not want to sacrifice everything that parenthood required me to give up. I loved her and our life together. Having children would only complicate everything further. She, on the other hand, expressed that she felt broken and less of a woman because she could not bear children, and she did not know if she ever would. I told her that it was entirely the wrong reason to bring life into this world. It felt very selfish, and I feared she would regret it. For her part, she threatened me with divorce, and eventually I gave in. We started trying again. Almost as soon as I became intimate with her unprotected, she got pregnant again. The pregnancy went smoothly, but the birth was an absolute nightmare. It took an eternity, the anesthesia failed, she tore her pelvic floor, and she suffered from preeclampsia. She almost died. I was terrified that I would lose her and that I would have to raise that child on my own. I never wanted to experience that again. Yes, I recognize that it was undoubtedly worse for her. But the difference is that she endured all of that for something she truly desired, while I felt as though I was essentially forced into it. As soon as our daughter was born, I cried. She was the most beautiful and amazing thing I had ever seen. I loved her immediately. Still, raising her has been incredibly challenging. Initially, I had to do it almost entirely by myself, as my wife needed to recover from the complications of the birth. Our daughter got sick frequently, resulting in many sleepless nights. When my wife finally started helping out, she never stopped complaining. Perhaps there was some postpartum depression involved, but I am not sure. Nevertheless, when our daughter was 7 months old and my wife continued to complain about how everything was so difficult and overwhelming, I snapped at her. After months of her hounding me about how she could never be truly happy without being a mother, wondering why I was doing all the work and questioning why she was always miserable, I had enough. Complaining about me was one thing, but criticizing our daughter, constantly referring to her as a difficult child, calling her a little goblin and so forth, how was any of this her fault? I told her, I told you so, which did not go over well, as you might expect. I decided not to bring it up again. Besides, my wife was earning more than I was, and our parents are not around. Mine have passed away and hers are not in contact due to some very serious issues. Therefore, I eventually quit my job to raise our child. I quit so that she could experience the true joy of motherhood. I only returned to work when she was 3. By that time, things had calmed down somewhat and we had finally begun to find our balance. In fact, it was a lot of fun. Our daughter is incredibly cute, and it is enjoyable to take her places since she finds joy in everything. I also enjoyed receiving free desserts and compliments for raising such a wonderful child. I was happy again. After a rough patch, I could finally say that I loved my life. Then my wife began to complain that it was unfair to bring only one child into this world. She believed our daughter needed a sibling just as she, my wife, had. I responded by reminding her that her sister is a very selfish person who is never there for her. Bringing another child would be even more challenging since our daughter is not old enough to care for herself. It would be chaos, and my wife would be miserable. For a while, I held my ground, but then her sister got pregnant with her second child and the threats of divorce resurfaced. Again, I caved because now it was not just about her. It meant she would potentially take my daughter away too. Well, once more we became pregnant easily. This time at least the birth went smoothly, but I am not proud of this and it is not a comfortable thing for a parent to admit, but my son did not elicit the same emotional response. I felt only numb at the time of his birth. My son being a very fussy baby does not help either, as every time he cries at night, all I can think is, go to sleep. I did not want you. I did not want this. I admit that I am not taking on the majority of childcare responsibilities this time. My wife is still on maternity leave and is absolutely miserable, but I am not stepping up this time. I believe that by allowing her to avoid confronting how difficult raising a child can be last time, I may have contributed to our current situation. Therefore, I checked out emotionally. I lied about work being extremely busy and needing to work long hours to avoid taking care of the baby and getting up at night. Instead, I sit at my work desk, playing games on my laptop or watching Netflix for a few hours each day before heading home. When I am home, I continually complain about how exhausted I am from work. By the time I finish cooking, putting our daughter to bed, and doing the dishes, it is time for bed. Whenever my wife asks me to get up for the baby more frequently, I explain that I truly need to be at my best for work, so I cannot. When my wife mentioned her maternity leave ending 6 months here, I merely shrugged and said I guess she will have to consider leaving her job because I had already done that once and have no intention of doing it again. I enjoy my job, am doing well, and have absolutely no desire to leave it. We can hire a nanny if she wishes. She became quite upset by that and discussions of divorce resurfaced, but at this point she has used that threat one too many times. If she believes she can do better on her own, I wish her luck. As I mentioned earlier, I even suggested hiring a nanny. She outright refuses. So at this point, she can deal with the consequences of her actions, or at least she would if our youngest allowed her to get any sleep. Her sister, unsurprisingly, is occupied with her own children and is completely unavailable. So this is where we stand. I engage in underhanded tactics to carve out time for myself each day, allowing my wife to fully experience the joys of motherhood while she remains utterly miserable. I hope this at least dissuades any thoughts of a third child. I know what some of you will say. I should have communicated honestly, and well, I tried. I reached out to her repeatedly. All I received in response were explanations about how she could not possibly be happy without being a mother, and then that she needed to have more than one child. If communicating only leads to threats of divorce, I hope she is satisfied now that she has what she desired. However, it is not what I wanted, and I am finished. I am not really seeking advice, and perhaps I am the worst person ever for doing this, but I simply wanted to share my story. Thank you for reading. Edit: to everyone saying I should not have acted this way. Okay, let me just hop into my time machine and rectify that. Thanks for the excellent advice.